Welcome back to the Chasing Tone podcast. Today, Blake Weiland and I talk about how much of an impact do artist endorsement deals have. We also talk a little bit about NAMM and a Andy Martin interview. If you're not sure who Andy Martin is, he is the guy that used to do Pro Guitar Shop videos on YouTube, a lot of gear reviews, then Tone Report, and now he's with Reverb. So let's jump right into it and go. And we're live right now. Right here, right now.
We're not yet. We're not yet. Click.
No, we're live.
Okay, now we're live.
We're live.
Do you want it to be like the weird British kind of thing, or do we want to be like the really annoying morning DJ? And it's 1:55 at the top of the hour. It's top of the hour. Well, traffic weather news. There's an overturned semi on I-84 coming at you with the new Nickelback track. Yeah. It's Ziggy B and WB in the morning. What are you doing?
You do that way too well. Oh my gosh. Well, Blake, I'm on Interstate 65 here.
Oh, 65.
And there's a big traffic jam.
Yeah, the old Mill Road. It'll get you every time. Hey, why don't you come on down? We're giving away $100 every 100 minutes. That's right, $100 every 100 minutes. If you hear the song, I don't know, Old Dirt Road, go ahead and call in. Call in now. Be caller number 74.
And let's go live. Caller number 1, you're not it. Caller number 2, you're not it.
Hi, my name is Jessica. I love that song, Old Dirt Road. Am I the caller?
Oh boy, we just lost all our listeners again.
Oh my goodness, that's fantastic.
I've been force-fed a lot of bad morning radio in my day, and it seeped into my very core.
I was going to say, you do that way better than I ever possibly could.
I did a sponsorship spot one time like that. I don't know if it ever saw the light. I don't think it ever saw the light of day, but
like you did it in a serious fashion?
No.
For the Tone Mob podcast?
No, I mean it was a complete joke, but I don't remember if it was for
like, Sinusoid, the best in cables.
I did like that whole like bit thing that I did at the beginning, but I did it much smoother. Right. I don't remember. It might be on Leon's computer somewhere. It was really dumb, but I don't know. I don't think we ever actually did anything with it.
That's fantastic.
Here we are. We're back. Are we going to pretend that we haven't already been chatting for like an hour?
Hey Blake, how are you doing? I'm doing the same way I was doing like an hour ago when you called me.
Interesting. I never would have guessed that you were doing identical to the last hour.
Oh yes. So you actually brought up a good point.
Yeah, it's something that I've been asked myself, and has been a point of discussion with a lot of companies. In fact, we may have talked about it before. I don't know if it was on the air or not, though.
How to market your business in 2018.
That's right.
That's not it.
Yeah, well, we definitely have talked about that. Oh, but it was 2017. We haven't done one this year, so we'll do.
This is the revised version. No,
yeah,
it's not. It's really not.
It might be. We'll see. And like I said, I think we may have touched on this before, but you would be a very good person to discuss this with. I have my theories, but you have real-world experience, which would be how important is it, how important are artist endorsement deals for, guitar gear companies these days? Is it even a big deal at all?
I think it depends on the company and the artist. Okay, so I bring this company up because I just had a conversation somewhat ish around these lines with Rattlesnake Cables.
Okay.
Hank, I believe his name is.
Good dude. Yeah, and Hank's awesome.
Yeah, super, super nice guy. So, he's growing his business. I don't think it would be to his advantage to get like Yngwie Malmsteen or someone on there. Like that's not really going to benefit him that much because that type of player who likes Yngwie generally isn't the same kind of tone chasing player that's going to buy a high end cable. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So like that's not going to work anymore. But if it was someone like a Tom Quayle, who like our artist, who has a very good social presence, a very hardcore, dedicated set of fans, then I think that could work really well. Because it's just, in the marketing world, they call them influencers. But really what it is the Andy from reverb.com now. It's the Andys of the world that do have some influence that people like, they watch, or the Dan and Mix, from that pedal show. People listen to what they say. They take their advice. And if Dan or Mix says a pedal is great, then people buy it. So I think if you could find like that type of artist that kind of has that appeal to people, I think it works really well. I mean, like Keeley did, he hit a home run with the D&M drive.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Which was, a Dan and Mick pedal. And it's because they're well known and well respected. Now, they're not selling a ton of albums, like they're not selling out stadiums playing their shred rock.
Right.
But arguably they're going to have a bigger effect on bottom end sales, which are what endorsements are for anyways, really. So if you want to get the nitty gritty.
Well, so that was going to be kind of my segue. Like when we think of artists, we tend to think of, professional musicians that have, that have a lot of fans, the Brad Paisley, for example.
Right.
Or, even smaller, like there's a lot of substantially smaller artists that are just as important for other companies. But like, I almost feel like it's treated the same way and it basically acts the same way. But I feel like the audience is, if I could talk, the audience is for, gear influencers, quote unquote, like Andy and like Dan and Mick. I feel like that's a very focused thing. Like that's why they're not selling out stadiums. They're selling out pedals.
Yes.
So I think it's a different thing, but I do think that there's certain artists for certain companies that will sell a lot of units. I'm trying to think of a good example. I don't think if you sponsored Smash Mouth that you'd probably like do much with it, even though they're like super famous and like becoming an internet meme now. I don't think by you giving them distortion pedals you'd sell a single one.
Well, and maybe it's kind of funny you mentioned Smash Mouth. I think their guitar player, I think we actually do endorse.
For real?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Oh, no, I didn't. I was just calling them out because I was trying to think of a random sensation.
I think is it them or it's one of those late 90s, early 2000s bands. I'm terribly sorry. I can't keep up with everybody. But
somebody once told me. I'm sorry.
World is gonna hold me.
That's fantastic.
So first of all, let's start by saying I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But there's that was a subtle joke.
Oh, I like it.
But there are artists that we endorse that. Man, how do I make this? I'm trying to frame this in such a way that it doesn't completely paint me as a business guy, because yes, there is a business side to it, but there's also the artistic side. So there are people that we do endorse that I'm not really saying, okay, if we endorse this guy, it's going to bring in X amount to the business.
Right.
But we do endorse him because it might be that we simply are big fans of his music,
Okay.
I could be personally like a gigantic fan. You know what I mean? And I got to be real careful not to name any names here.
Like you're not endorsing them because there's going to be a big ROI. You're doing it because you appreciate what they've done and you want to.
Sometimes, yeah. And then there are other times where I've never heard of the band, but or it may not be the type of thing that I listen to personally, but I know they're very well respected, and I know that is going to bring a return. So you get that too. And again, it's not a personal thing. It's like, if I was doing a podcast, for example, and I like Joe's Pizza in Morgantown, maybe I'd throw a commercial on there for him because I like him. But enter the promo code for 60% off all Fender guitars. That's going to make me more money.
Right.
So I mean, there's a balance there. So it's kind of a hard question to really answer because a lot of it just kind of comes from your gut. You're like, is this the right thing? There's not really a good way to answer that. It's like saying, is there an ROI, a return on investment, for a magazine ad? Maybe. How do you measure that? It's hard to. Mm-hmm. It's hard to really measure that.
Right. It's extremely difficult.
Yeah. So that doesn't mean you shouldn't do any magazine ads. It just means you got to kind of put on your businessman hat and kind of search your gut. At least that's how I look at it.
Yeah. I when you mentioned like having artists that you just want to like you think what they're doing is cool and like that part of it, I kind of forget that like there's probably a lot of people that way because there's probably guys you've looked at and you're like, really, why are you sponsoring that guy? Without like taking in, you mentally might think that, and then without taking into account like maybe that business owner is a super fan and they just like. I know for a fact that like I've talked to guys before. I'm like, yeah, if this project is successful, I gotta get this thing into that guy's hands. Well, why? He's not a big deal. I'm like, because he is a big deal to me. Like,
yeah,
like there's bands that honestly, if they hadn't been around and creating music, you and I would not be speaking right now. Like,
no, you're exactly right. You're exactly right.
Like, I wouldn't have got us into music. I wouldn't have got into gear. Like, the whole domino. If that one song hadn't existed, this whole thing may never have happened.
You're exactly right. And there are people that we endorse technically that I know they're not. It's not making us any money.
Mm-hmm.
But I endorse them because maybe I grew up listening to their songs, and that's a big part of my foundation of even making pedals. Mm-hmm. Or even wanting to play guitar to begin with.
Right.
You know what I mean? So for me, it's kind of a gratifying feeling to give back in a way.
Yes.
If that makes sense. But you can't do that with everyone, or else you have a hobby and not a business. Like at the end of the day, you've got to make more money than you spend, or else it's just a hobby.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't do that with everyone, but you're exactly right. I mean, so on February 4th, which would be tomorrow, as the time we record this, or no, I'm sorry, February 5th, a Monday. So 2 days from now, there'll be a video out that I did with Andy on YouTube, where I'm asking Andy all kinds of different questions that I know you probably hit on some of these on your podcast, on the Tone Mob podcast.
Yeah.
Which was the first interview I'd ever heard from Andy. And it was fantastic. I loved it. It was just great. And I'm not blowing smoke up your butt. I remember when you did that, I was like, how did you do that? You're like, that was great. How did you get a hold of Andy? That blew my mind. So
I got lucky. I knew some people who knew some people.
Yeah. So I would preface this by, first of all, if you're interested in that, pause this, go listen to the Tone Mob podcast. It was probably, a year ago you did that?
Yeah, probably a year and a half. I can't remember what the episode number is, but if you Google Tone Mob Andy Martin, you'll probably find it.
Right, yeah, so listen to that. It's fantastic. But I bring that up because one of the things that he had mentioned, I forget the exact question I asked it, but he has said that he did a particular demo with using a particular song in order to reach one of his favorite artists, because he was hoping that guy would see the video, and it was kind of like an homage to it was a cool thing for him.
Right.
Does that make sense? Like he was trying to reach this artist that he was a big fan of by playing some very obscure cuts off an album that you wouldn't know unless you were a big fan of that artist.
That's cool.
So yeah, I mean, it's just like, and I would have never known as a listener. So I think even guys like that, I mean, that's not an endorsement per se, but it's still kind of the same thing where you're doing a particular action in order to show gratitude of some sort.
That's true. That is a similar, different but similar kind of thing. That's fascinating. I am really looking forward to that video.
I will tell you, it was at the Earthquaker party that we did. Not us. That Jamie, who put that on? JHS and
Earthquaker, I believe. I think it kind of gets condensed to EQD, but like JHS has been involved every year for a couple of years now, I think.
I thought so. So to kind of fill everyone in, it's kind of like this big, technically bowling party, but it's a big party that they put on every year at Winter NAMM. They invite all the pedal builders and basically everyone that's involved in the gear industry.
Mm-hmm.
And, so there's podcasters there. Like, for example, 60 Cycle, Ryan. Ryan, I was interviewing Andy, and Ryan walked up and got right in the middle of it. He didn't know that he thought we were just talking. So I turned the camera around on him, and I was like, I brought him into the video.
See, that's the difference between Ryan and I. Is I seen you guys over there, and I knew exactly what you were doing, and I was like, "Oh, I should go invade." I'm not going to.
Oh, you totally should have. You totally should have. But the room we're in, it was noisy, but it's a boom mic, so it captured. There is some background noise, but you really can hear us quite well, especially with the way that microphone compresses and blocks out audio and stuff. So. It is a little bit loudy in the background. In fact, I'm contemplating on actually using that audio as one of like a tone tip episode of the Chasing Tone podcast.
Right.
So I actually need to listen back to that audio and see if I can't clean it up a little bit more, and I might release that as another podcast here at some point.
That would be cool.
Because
that's my preferred format.
Yeah, because that's the thing. Not everybody's going to sit down and watch a YouTube video of two dudes talking,
Well, I will tell you this. This is a really interesting thing that I was... So, because it was NAMM, I got to basically meet with a huge amount of the Guitar Gear podcasters and talk about... nerding out how we are the biggest geeks in the world, talk about podcasting and all its weird little intricacies and everything. And we were just talking, I was talking to several guys about the difference between having a YouTube audience and having a podcast audience, and how you can have both. And some guys do, like, Ryan there is a good example. And there's not nearly the crossover that you would think there would be.
No, there's not. There's really not. There's a few, but I have noticed that the person that listens to the Chasing Tone podcast is generally a totally different type of person, not better or worse, just a different type of person than the person that's going to watch my YouTube videos.
Yeah, they're better. Wait.
I love you guys more. Do you listeners that listen to this podcast, I love you more than my YouTube audience. Okay?
It's like picking children. I like this one better.
So, but I mean... it's just a different medium. Like you said, you can be driving down the road and listening to Blake talk to Andy on a podcast, or be, I don't know, mowing the grass or something. That's when I listen to podcasts, is when I'm mowing the grass, or if I'm running, I'll run and listen to podcasts, but not if I'm pumping the iron. If I'm pumping the iron, we're spitting out some dope rhymes with Pitbull.
No, not Pitbull.
Pitbull.
No, not really. Not Pitbull. Really? Mr.
See,
Worldwide?
Mr. Worldwide.
No.
Mr. International.
No.
Yes. Well, hey, I told you a long time ago, I like all kinds of music.
Yeah, you said
I do.
You said music, though.
I know. It seems very odd for some 43-year-old dude to be listening to rap. I know. I know that's very odd.
So this is kind of funny. Not to keep talking about NAMM, but we're going to be for weeks, so I'm sorry, everyone. I was driving to NAMM in an Uber with Jess, and we looked at each other, and we were like, what is this? Like, what is on this man's stereo right now? And, like, we texted each other kind of back and forth so as not to be too rude. And he's like, I think that's Pitbull. And I'm like, it's Pit. And I looked at the screen. I was like, yeah, it was Pitbull. And I texted my wife. I was like, I'm in an Uber. I'm trapped in an Uber listening to Pitbull right now. I don't know. I've never heard this before, but I don't ever want to hear it again.
Okay, but understand where I'm coming from, though. If I start listening to guitar-based stuff, and I've tried this. I've tried this. I stop focusing on exercising, and I start focusing on guitar stuff.
Okay.
So
all right. That's reasonable.
It has to be something that I'm not like that into, but it's got a beat that just goes on and on. You know what I mean? Like it's just a rhythm type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So generally, you're not gonna like come hang out with me, drink a few beers while we listen to Pitbull. It's just not gonna happen.
I mean, I would have imagined that you were a little more like me. I'm like, Pantera. Like, here we go. You know?
I will tell you, and this is going to blow your mind. So I met Katy Perry's guitar player at NAMM.
She has a guitar player?
That was my first thought. And Chris Payton.
Okay.
Probably. Now, keep in mind, like, I'm sure there's a lot of media around Katy Perry, so I'm not going to say whether she's a good person or bad person. I don't care.
Right.
But this guy was the coolest person. Like, he was the nicest guy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and very talented too. I mean, like, the guy could play. He could play really well, and you know, that's his gig. He plays worldwide tours with Katy Perry. You know, and
it's actually probably a pretty good gig.
And you know what? There's we have another guitar player that actually came out here to the barn to play some pedals. Who played? Oh man, it's a gigantic name, and I forget the rapper's name. Oh my gosh, not 50 Cent.
Wait,
it was like,
was it Jay-Z?
Jay-Z, that's it.
Yeah, I remember this either on an episode or something. And I think
Jay-Z's guitar player. I didn't know he had a guitar player, but yeah, he's a good guitar player, and he uses a Pinnacle.
Well, that's cool.
So, yeah, absolutely.
I
think
I
Chris
like
from
Jay-Z.
Katy Perry.
I get that. That's cool.
Yeah,
all of a sudden, I like it, so it's okay with me.
Well, if you hear any guitar work on Katy Perry, it's very possible he's using the Dual Fusion.
Well, look at you go.
I know. Next thing you know, Pitbull's guitar player will call me up, and it'll be a full circle.
Oh, no. I'm sorry. You play with who? Oh. What is that? Is that like a guy is there the guy who plays at Dog Pounds? I don't know who that is.
No, Pitbull, man. Mr. Worldwide.
Oh, the places I could go that I definitely won't.
I know. Yeah, but I don't. How do other companies handle their endorsements? You since you talk to a lot of people, you may know this a lot better.
Well, some people kind of unfortunately falsely assume that if an artist is famous or is somewhat successful, that by giving them whatever their product is, it doesn't have to be pedals, but like that it's automatically going to like translate without really taking into account like. Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a band that's a good example, but like, there's bands that are relatively famous that the band has a big social presence or a big following, but the guitar player doesn't.
I think a perfect example. Correct me if I'm wrong. No disrespect. Let me preface this with no disrespect meant whatsoever. But I know Kirk Hammett is part owner of KDHK, right?
Yes.
Now, I don't know how popular they are, but as far as sales figures go, but I wonder how much it's helped that company with Kirk being a part of it. And Kirk is arguably one of the top most famous guitar players in the world.
Yes.
Not the best, but, very, very famous for playing guitar.
Oh, without a doubt, he is definitely one of the most famous living guitar players, for sure.
Right. So if he can't completely take over the entire game of pedal building with his name, then how much does the name actually mean? I know the other owner, I think his name's David Caron, I believe. If he didn't have Kirk Hammett with it, and he just put out the designs under, Dave Caron or whatever his name is, under a different pedal name, how much different would that brand be?
Well, I can say that I don't know. There again, without knowing what their numbers look like, it's really hard to say. But like you said, they haven't ousted Boss or
right.
or EHX or anything.
Right. They're probably not outselling the biggest of big names in the pedal industry. Yeah.
Yeah. But I will say, I think that in particular, like we wouldn't even probably know the company yet in the amount of, because they haven't been around that long. Actually, it's been a little while now, so that's maybe a false statement. But we probably wouldn't have found out about them as quickly if Kirk hadn't, the famous real guitar player thing. The
tweet thing, right? The first company by a real guitar player.
Yeah.
I'd forgotten about that.
I think that may have actually been, in retrospect, and maybe I said this around the time, but that might have been on purpose.
It might have been a fairly bright marketing tactic.
Yeah, I don't think it would be on purpose to the degree that he like actually wants to make everybody mad. I think it might have been on purpose to get people chatting about it, because to be
Just
perfectly
an awareness.
Yeah, just in general awareness. Because just to be perfectly frank, like Kirk Hammett starting a pedal company is, I'd go, what do they got?
Right. You'd be
Okay.
like, Kirk Hammett? Really?
Like,
That's weird.
Yeah, and I'd probably like look at the website, and then depending on what the product was, I may or may not ever come back. But that I kept looking. I kept wondering what they were doing, because it caused this kind of controversy. So I don't know.
And then you have Eddie Van Halen with his brand. You know, he used to be part of PV, and he started his own brand.
So yeah, that worked out pretty well for him. But it was also done a little bit differently, and the way he's Eddie has these legendary sounds. Not the Metallica doesn't, but like I'm pretty sure there's like a whole forum dedicated to chasing Eddie Van Halen's sound. I don't know if Metallica has the same thing.
I don't think so. Not that I've seen. If it's not as prominent, if there is.
Yeah.
I'll put it that way.
Yeah. So my point is Eddie was like really kind of the perfect guy to try to leverage something like that. And it helps that the products are all pretty cool, in my opinion.
Right.
So,
But right now, I don't know. You know, like I said, I used this example earlier. I don't know if Yngwie Malmsteen started a pedal company, if it would do the same thing. You know, because it may be too much of a different base, a different audience that likes Yngwie Malmsteen music. They may not really be into pedals.
Well, see, and I think it depends on the player too, because who's somebody I'm trying to think. Like, well, I think if Kevin Shields from My Bloody Valentine, who's obviously famous but not nearly as famous as the guys we just mentioned, like I think if he started a pedal company, it'd probably do really well, because he's famous for having a massive pedal board.
Right, that's his thing, yeah.
Yeah. So I bet if that guy come out with a reverb, I know I'd be super interested in listening to it. So, because like that guy knows pedals.
Right.
A guitar player who, like Yngwie, who's famous for only using a gray box DOD into a high gain amp, well, that guy can shred my face off all day long, but that doesn't mean he really knows gear in the same way that somebody like Kevin does.
Right, he's probably not going to sell a Strymon type of pedal very well, because that's just not his thing.
No.
I had to guess, anyways.
And that's what I mean about and now we're kind of talking about artists starting companies, but I think the same theory goes for artists working with companies. By that same token, if Kevin Shields did something with Strymon, it'd probably go really well.
Right. By the way, Kevin, if you're looking for endorsements, call me.
Yeah, I don't know how much that works these days.
I don't, you know, we don't really look for endorsements, you know? I mean, I don't actively go up to people and be like, oh, please let me endorse you. Please, 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 please. Because just generally it doesn't bring in a gigantic amount of income, generally. Now, I will tell you, again, I got to be careful, because I know there's two more signature brand, pedals coming out this year. I think this year. That
don't tell them about my signature fuzz.
I'm not okay. 3, including that one. And in this situation, it makes complete sense. Right. But it's every situation is just different. I mean, you know, like going back to the rattlesnake cables thing. If you're the guitar player in, I don't know, Men at Work or something, right? I mean, no disrespect to whoever plays guitar for Men at Work, or if they're even still a band, but I don't know how much that would help you.
I think what we're trying to get at is the popularity of a band doesn't necessarily translate into a good endorsement opportunity. Yeah. I mean, you put it way better than I did. It's best to have, you know, I mean, it's best to have a successful artist on your roster, but like, if you're looking at it from a business perspective, you really got to look at like, is this guy known for his effects use? Is this guy, or forget about it, is this guy known for, you know, a certain sound, or is he just a rock guitar player? You know what I mean? Right. Is he, you know, does it make sense to have, like, is it worth the investment of, because I mean, I don't know if people know this or not, and it's not common across the board with everyone. Every deal is different, but some of these guys not only get product, but they get paid on a per unit basis. Some
do. Mm-hmm.
So like it's a you got to really look at it as an investment in that regard. And I think it's just like, the only reasons to do it are A, you're a big fan, or B, the numbers are going to work. So, I mean, not necessarily a big fan. I shouldn't say that. If you want to. If you just want to, then why are you even asking me?
Basically, if you just want to ignore this entire podcast.
Yeah, like if you want to, then that's as good of a reason. That's like just as legitimate of a reason as it's going to make me a bunch of money. In fact, maybe even more legitimate if you just want to. Like that's the best reason.
Totally. I mean, I could totally see me with the George Lynch pedal, and it's just because I grew up listening to George Lynch, and not to knock him in any way, shape, or form. I would never do that.
No.
To me, he is one of my top guitar idols. He's up there. He's up there in my. Even though I can't play anything like it, that's kind of what got me started in tone stuff. So, I don't know.
I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you're looking at it from a strictly business perspective, look at all the angles. What's the guy known for? Where are you trying to get your company known for? Like, does this all mesh up? Can you have a D&M drive? Because that's a perfect storm.
Yes, that was a perfect. Well done, Robert.
Mm-hmm.
Well done.
So, look at that kind of stuff. If you're asking that question, wow, that was a really strangely weird way to actually. I think we actually did answer the question, but we sure did it in a weird way.
We went around in circles on that one, but to the listener, you're welcome. I'm teasing.
All right, we're gonna close out the bottom of the hour. Oh no, that's not.
That's a perfect way to go. Take us out.
All right, everybody. This is Blake and Brian for Chasing Tone, and hopefully you have a nice weekend. We'll be back on Monday, slinging that new Pitbull song. Oh yeah, I don't know. Bye.
And thanks so much for listening to the Chasing Tone podcast. I really appreciate it. If you have any comments or questions, you can always email podcast@wamplerpedals.com. I'll do my very best to answer you. If it's something we can put on the podcast, then we'll answer it in a podcast format. And again, thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you next week.